I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are on electric chokes, but personally, I'm a fan. I've used manual chokes in the past, yeah, whatever they are, what they are. But a well tuned electric choke is, in my opinion, the nicest deal that you got going. At least when you're talking about these aftermarket Holley carburetors. So I decided to go from a manual choke to an electric choke with a Holley kit. And just like most things I've identified, Holly's instructions really stink on a lot of the stuff that they put out. To put out great stuff, but their instructions are kind of crappy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna share with you, walk you through a little bit of what I learned, how to make this swap quick and easy. Because if you're relying on the instructions, it's gonna take you a way a lot longer. So sounds like something that's interesting to you. Stick around. So this is the kit that I ordered just from Summit, and that's everything that you need in here to just convert any old Holley that's got a manual choke to an electric choke. Now this is basically what I'm starting with, just the good old manual choke, and just like so many of them, they're defeated so that they don't work because they are kind of a pain in the ass. And the main problem that I had with mine in my application was cable routing was super not awesome. So that's the biggest thing that prompted me to go back to an electric choke. Like I said before, if you have them set up right, there's absolutely nothing wrong with an electric choke. They're probably the nicest way to go. But first things first, let's pop this old choke off. So first thing I did is I just replaced this choke actuator arm. Once I put it in there, I realized that it's identical to the one that was in there. So if you don't feel you want to, if you don't want that beautiful piece of shininess in there, just leave the one that was in there and go ahead. Next thing is the little arm that goes on here. This is what gave me the most trouble, just trying to figure this out. There was no clear pictures. So this is the item. They ship it without this screw in here. To be clear, the screw does come in the kit. It's just not installed. Can be installed one of two ways. And that's where my problem came in. And that's honestly the whole thing that screwed me up. If you take it just like that, have a look, and you install the screw just like that. Now, this little arm here on the back side just rests right on here. And that's what gives you, it's like the max opening on it. So I can't do this one-handed. I'm just going to put it on and show you what I mean. So that goes on there just like that, if you can see. And one thing to remember, this little spring, it actually has to go over top of this this little axle, but it's got to end up in the middle in between there. It's really not a pain in the ass at all, but it's just something that you've got to be aware of, because without that in there, you got nothing. So bear that in mind too. Now this little deal, which also comes with the kit, it's the next to go on. It fits snugly over the end, and because of these flats, understanding that these arms have to curve to the inside, there's really only one way that can go in. So at least that part was fairly simple. Now the next thing is there's a screw that holds the whole thing back, holds the whole thing on, and you have to reuse the one out of your old kit. That actually, they don't come with a new one, so bear that in mind. Make sure that doesn't get lost in the mix. Once you've got that on, this spring that we talked about earlier, it has to go up and around in there. You see where that reaches in there? That's where that has to end up, just to keep all this stuff properly springy-dingy actioned the way it's got to be. Now that part there was the main problem that I had with Holley's instructions. I just couldn't for the life of me, because this can go on 2 or 3 different ways, and you can have this going from this way, or you can have this going from this way. and I had a heck of a time. And that little piece is what prompted me to make this video. But I'll carry you guys along through to the end just so you see my finished product. So the next thing you got to do is, if you remember, I talked about that passage that had to be open and free into the bottom of the carburetor. Well, this is the orifice that meets up with that passage, and this little cork gasket, you have to install that now. It comes like this, and it's adhesive backed, and all you do is just you line it up there and press it on, and this portion stays, and the rest of it just magically breaks free. And it's super easy to do, but don't forget that, because without that, your vacuum passage won't be sealed up, and you're not going to get the kind of choke performance that you're looking for. So this now is another area that it's not overly well illustrated in the instructions, but this this on the choke actuator arm, it's got a little hole for a pin. You can see right there. But now that choke actuator arm has to slide through that hole, and the long piece of it actually has to fit underneath this red plastic arm, so that when this comes up, everything actuates, everything comes up together. And once you get that pin in there, it'll be self-explanatory. I'll just put it together and show you what I mean from a different angle. I wanted to make sure this was clear, because when I first started looking at it, it wasn't at all clear. So I'm just trying to help everybody get the best chance for success, and if they decide to do this installation. There, now hopefully you can see what I mean. That pin, which coincidentally I should mention, you got to save that pin because a new one does not come in the kit for whatever odd reason. But you see where that extended arm off the choke actuator arm goes underneath the red arm, and what that red arm does is it just sets your high idle based on your choke position. So that's all that thing does. So that's on there. That's pretty easy. That just mounts with these 3 gold Phillips head screws that come in the kit, and there's only really one way that can go on there, so there should be no issue or concern there. Now, next thing, this gasket. We're going to set this gasket in there, and what we got to do is, I'll maybe set up on the tripod or something, because putting this bimetal spring in there, it's not difficult, but you got to do it just right so that you get the results that you need. Now this hole has to go over top of this part of the spring, so that just goes on like that, and you've got to turn this in the rotation that tightens the spring to a point where this little marker, and I'm just going to put it in the middle of the adjustment range, and that appears to me to be the way that we want it. Let me just double check. Oh no, you know what? I was wrong. We don't want to give that a full crank on the spring, otherwise we're never gonna get full choke actuation. Now this next piece, this little spring washer, whatever you want to call it, maybe not a spring washer, but it goes on here, and it is what holds the bimetallic spring in place in the location at the setting that you want it at. So 3 screws around the outside, and that is good. One other thing that's noteworthy is this ground wire. This comes in the kit as well, but you just hook it on to the negative here, and it fits in there nice and snug. There's no fear of that coming out. Those are real good connections. And you just ground it through the body of the carburetor, and that just brings your this heating element as a path to ground. This positive cable, if you don't have an electric choke previously, all this needs to do is basically when the ignition is hot, put full 12 volts to this. Don't use don't use coil power or anything like that, because that can be less than 12 volts, and then you're taking capacity away from your ignition system as well. So find a good solid key on 12 volts, and then you're gonna have good success, and your electric choke's gonna work the way you want it to. Now, one of the key things to make sure that when you're confident everything's working, is just do like that, and just like you gave it a pump to start it, and make sure you see how this clicked. This red piece came up into place, and your primary butterfly is just slightly open. Now, that little screw that we talked about previously is lining up on that red plastic deal, and that is actually what's holding that butterfly open, giving your high idle. So just make sure that's happening, because that's a key to like a good starting electric choke vehicles, to make sure that part of it is happening. I have seen on electric chokes that have been on for a long time where this plastic arm kind of gets worn and crappy, and that doesn't work the best. So that's just something to keep an eye out. But these are all new parts, so we shouldn't have to worry about anything like that. The one thing in the Holley instructions, it does say to ensure that this, they call it a fresh air vent, and then there is actually a little screen on it. Make sure that doesn't get blocked off and plugged. But other than that, you should be ready to put this thing on the engine and be ready to go. So that's it. Not that big of a deal. There's a couple of those things that I wanted to point out and share, because like I say, it wasn't super clear in the instructions. Now, I know my video is not absolutely the greatest. I do my best to try and get in there and show you what I think you need to see. It doesn't always autofocus the way you think it ought to do, but anyway, if it helps somebody else out there, that's all I'm hoping for. So appreciate you. Subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this kind of thing. We try and just put out whatever we can, whenever we can, just to share what we've figured out over the years. Thanks for watching.